Tairo, you're on with Puck, Christy, and Sinn Sage.
Hello, hi. I'm really self-conscious about how my voice sounds. I sound pubescent. Anyhow, hello, hi.
Hey, we're
if we
just
could
glad to
talk
hear
into,
from you.
if we could talk into turning down the YouTube feed that in the background, though, we're hearing a bit of an echo.
Oh yeah, I paused it and I'm just gonna focus on the call.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you.
And your voice is awesome.
What did you have for us?
Speaker's off. Great. So, questions. I guess my first question would be, I came in right when you're talking about the whole controversy with OnlyFans, et cetera. So my first question would be is, let's say as an individual, you want to learn more about sex work, advocacy, rights, etc. Where would you go? Sounds like a very big question. So try to answer your best way.
I mean, I as far as I know, there doesn't exist like a place that just talks about all that. So I think like what we were just saying is follow sex workers and follow porn stars and porn people on Twitter and start there is a really good place. Yeah.
Yeah,
you guys
and
think?
there are definitely some great advocacy groups. I mean, you already mentioned to us the global network of sex work, and we'll have some links and things to that in the show notes. I think a big part of it is watching shows like this, listening to performers. Like when we speak to sex workers of a number of different stripes, listen to what they're saying, vote the way that they're voting, be interested and worried about the things that they're interested and worried about.
All right. That's a really good answer. That's a really good answer, and I'm really helpful that you're able to answer that very big question. So I guess another question I have questions, but I usually do anyway. So my question is, let's say that you were a sex worker of some sort, and then somewhere along, you talked about this earlier, somewhere along the way you get, there's like some abuse of power, et cetera, where some harm came some way, and you said something about how like Twitter works, but like how does that work, at least in the States really? How do you advocate that you were abused in some way in your job, but you're a sex worker, so there's a lot of discrimination across that.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest problems with sex work being practically illegal in this country, for sure. Because when abuses do happen, it's like you can go to the police, but they're garbage anyway, especially if you're a sex worker. So
yeah, there are like existing laws on the books to protect you, just the same way there are in every other industry.
Mm-hmm.
But are they appropriately applied? Like, are those protections actually available to sex workers? Is a really valid question.
In some way.
Yeah, I mean, it's all under the umbrella for sure. So what I would say too is, I forgot to mention, there is a place called Free Speech Coalition, FSC. FSC is our main advocacy. So I'm absolutely sure they have a website. I would say try look up Free Speech Coalition first.
Yeah, freespeechcoalition.com. And again, that'll be in the show notes for this episode. Yeah,
and so what they do is, like, when there's a test that has popped for something, for, like, we just had a performer, somebody tested positive for HIV. So FSC contacts every single performer in the industry and sends an email saying, we've got a production hold until we clear everybody and we know that everyone's safe. And so they do that. If there was some kind of an abuse on set, if you have an agent, you should be able to go to your agent. But like I said, a lot of them are crap. So I would go directly to FSC, the Free Speech Coalition, and I would tell them, this happened, and then you can get a press release and it'll probably come out, and it's almost like a trial by your peers kind of thing. So it depends on like what kind of justice you're trying to seek, but if your main issue is to make sure that other performers stay away from this person or this company or whatever, those are the routes that I would definitely take.
All right, and then my last question would be is like, okay, you probably talked about this conversation a couple times before, maybe not, who knows? But let's say magical world, human rights exist, and sex work of sorts was delegalized. So essentially, like, you can't get arrested for doing sex work, and it's appropriate, right? So like, if you were to like pay your rent with your money for where you live, it won't be considered a brothel, because that's what happens here in Canada. Like, if you pay money with your sex work, the place of living could be considered a brothel or something, or a sex place, and then you could be arrested. So, like,
Wow.
we know how like laws in like concerning sex work can be very loopholey and very vague. So in your magical world where it wasn't like that, what were some laws you focus on, like unionizations and shit?
What would I focus on, sort of like socially, if sex work was accepted? Is that kind of what you're asking?
Yeah, but also like legal support, like full, real legal support, where like companies and others can like not negatively affect the lives of sex workers.
I mean, I
Yes.
might retire from this show if we ever hit that type of wonderful utopia and my work
Right?
here was done and I could just
Yeah.
sort of like walk off. But
Okay.
no, Sin, I
For
am
example.
actually really curious about your answer.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that in that world, which would be a dream, there would also be a system set up. You know, we would have, we wouldn't even need like an advocacy group or whatever. It would just be kind of like the organization of porn stars, and we would have a union, and we would be able to get health insurance, and so we would have an accountability sector or something, you know, branch that it was like, you can go and report stuff to this branch, and it would all just be above board. And, you know, they would be, accountants would be coming to us, begging us to let them do our taxes, and banks would be like, please bank with us, you know, and so just, there'd be no stigma. And so, yeah, there'd be like the, you know, the internal office of affairs for porn stars and sex work. Like, that would be a nice.
That's pretty cool.
I'm gonna fall
'cause
asleep
I
dreaming
was
about
talking
that
this.
fantasy.
Hey, Tairo, I do have a resource
Yeah.
for you. This time last week, if somebody talked to me about the FSC, I would have assumed they were talking about the Forestry Stewardship Council. But because since they suggested following some of your favorite performers, there are a number of people, performers on TikTok, who like talking about behind the scenes industry secrets, and that's how I found out about the filming freeze. Right, especially if you can look up the TikTok of Allison Ray. She gives a lot of these behind the scenes, and talks even a little bit about advocacy. So that's another example of the kind of people that you can follow, because if you really want to know how to help people, ask the people who need the help and see where they're leading you.
Yes, exactly. That's the most important thing.
Okay, this is really pleasant. Thank you so much. I got some pretty good answers, and I think like asking the last question sounds a little bit more positive as well. And so I'm happy that I was somehow sneak that to the conversation, that energy.
No, and that's
well,
one thing
thank
that
you,
I, like whenever I go on a show, I want to not just like have the good conversations here, but have models of how to have good conversations. So the next person you talk to, you're going to be able to talk to in this way and say, these are the resources I found, and it just spreads from here. So thank you very much for your call.
Yeah. All right, thank you so much. You guys have a good time talking. I'll be watching. It sounds weird saying it, but yeah, I would. You guys
have a good night. Thank you.
Hey, thanks so much.
You. Bye.
Bye.